Alrighty, how do you do? I'm Stan Sowers with Camperland Trailer Sales in Conroe, Texas. Today we're going to do a class on 12 volt. In this class we're going to talk about batteries, power converters, which are the same thing, kind of like battery chargers. Most of y'all familiar with the term battery charger. And we're going to touch on inverters a little bit, but not a whole lot. Main class is going to be on 12 volt. One of the first things I want to talk about on batteries is in the RV industry, on trailers, fifth wheel, pop-up tent campers, the coach side of a motorhome, we're going to be using deep cycle marine RV batteries, not automotive starting cranking batteries. So we're not interested in the cold cranking amperage of a deep cycle marine battery at all. We are interested in the size of batteries. One little quick hint on purchasing a battery: if you go somewhere and they've got the same size battery for 3 different prices, in your mind, which one do I need? Well, you need the one that weighs the most. If they all physically weigh 22 pounds, then buy the cheapest one, because all 3 batteries are exactly the same. Battery manufacturers will change the stickers on them, do one in red, white, and blue, USA, sell it for $12 more than the cheapest one, same exact battery. So don't pay any more for battery unless it weighs more. You're buying plates in a battery, so you're buying weight. So that'd be the best thing to tell you on what battery. Also make sure it is a marine battery. In the automotive industry, you do have automotive starting battery as well, which is going to be separate from the coach batteries. When we're talking batteries and we're talking about 12 volt, the term 12 volt is not what we ever want to see if we're taking a voltmeter reading. If we see 12 volt on a reading of the battery, that battery's about 60% discharged. A full charged battery that's been off of a charge for a while and the battery's cooled back down to a normal temperature, 80s or 90s. It's Texas, so if it's 100, that's normal. But we're going to read about 12.99 on a full charged battery, so we're really talking about almost 13 volts. 12 volts is a no-no, but that's the phrase and terminology we use generally. This is a volt ohm meter. Just because I've got one in this class doesn't mean you need one or you need to go buy one. Almost every RV has a battery tester meter on the monitor panel in your RV. But I'm going to also tell you why you can't always use that, or what you have to do to make it useful. On the monitor panel, if you go in and hit the battery button, it's going to tell you some condition, but it doesn't tell you the voltage. So you're not always 100% sure. If we have the RV plugged into an electrical source and we hit that button, we are not reading the battery voltage at all. We are reading the power converter voltage. So if you want to read the voltage for your battery, we've got to go to the breaker box, kick the main breaker off, unplug the trailer, fifth wheel motorhome, but we've got to turn off the AC electricity of the RV. Then the battery monitor will read the battery voltage. If you're getting ready to go out on a trip, you're going to make sure you got gas or diesels full. You should make sure your tires are full, whether you do or not, who knows. We should not leave with a battery that's not full charged. The battery's the most important piece of the entire RV. If that battery's bad, there's no water in it. It will not hold voltage. Our appliances, refrigerators especially, can't work correctly. Air conditioner thermostats might not work right. No air conditioner. We go home in Texas. It's not camp with no air conditioner. So this would be as important as checking your fuel gauge to see what kind of condition your battery's in. If you have a voltmeter, and I've got 2 brand new batteries right off the shelf, so I'm going to check the voltage for you. And this battery is 12.60 volts. This one's never been charged, but it's a new battery sitting. so it's not 100% charged. This one here, we put on the charger for about 30 minutes before we did the class. And that's actually not going to fully charge it, but we're at 12.92 volts on this one. We checked the voltage right as we pulled it off the charger. It was at 13.08 volts off the charger. Now this cooled down, we've actually dropped some voltage. So you would like to see the monitor saying it's full charged if you don't own a voltmeter. And like I said, you don't need to run out by a voltmeter. Unless you've used one all your life, you know how to use one, don't bother. But we do want to make sure our batteries are in good shape. In this industry, we replace batteries very quickly and a lot sooner than we should because of the way we charge them. Now, while we're driving down the road, if your vehicle's wiring's working correctly, you don't have any blown fuses, your truck or tow vehicle will be charging this battery while we're driving. Now, not like a battery charger. The charge line on vehicles might only give you 2 or 3 amps. It's not 30, 40, 50 amps like a converter could give you or an alternator could give you, but you are charging going down the road. The power converter systems that we use in the RV industry are called converters, not chargers, and there is a difference in them. We've got converters here that are true converters. They're going to put out one voltage all the time. It never changes. That's what I'm going to call the bad battery charger. By having a 12-volt system that doesn't monitor the battery power, that stays on all the time at 13.5 to 14 volts, we boil the water out of the batteries. We actually overheat them. In the overheat process, they boil water. So as an RVer, regardless of what brand you bought, whether you bought a $5,000 one or $85,000 one, you got to check battery water if you're leaving it plugged in at least every 30 days. Past that, you could ruin a battery. We could take a brand new, the best battery made. Matter of fact, this battery I've got in front of me is the only battery made in the United States. All the rest of the major brands are all made in the Philippines or overseas. But even this one, kind of what I think's the best, if we don't check the water and we let it boil out, we can ruin that battery in 8 months. So it doesn't matter how good the battery is. There are some types of batteries that are sealed. Would I spend $400 on a great battery? I wouldn't, because if we buy the battery that's sealed, that's not going to boil the water out. If you read the directions, there's about 3 paragraphs on how to charge it. Our converters cannot charge those batteries the way they're designed. So you just wasted your money on the $400 battery, unless you change the charging system. And I do change charging systems different from what an RV manufacturer installs, and I'm going to explain to you why and how you can do that too. This is probably the most dominant converter being used in the industry. You're going to find it in most trailers, fifth wheels, whether it's a 30 amp electric system or a 50 amp. They make them in different sizes. This is a converter, not a converter charger. So when we plug this RV in, this converter is going to put out 1 voltage all the time, constantly. So we are going to have to check our battery water if you got one that looks like this, regular basis. When a customer comes in, one of our questions is, where's your converter? At today's labor, if you're paying somebody $130 an hour, you don't want to be paying 15 minutes to look for your converter if you know where it is. So we question our customers, where's your converter? So we don't have to look for it, save you money on a repair. A lot of people don't know the answer to that. We ask it and we get a blank stare. They don't know what the converter is, where it is at all. This is the actual converter that mounts under here inside this plastic box. This door's keeping you from seeing it. So this would be where the converter is, where your 110 breakers are, your 12 volt fuses, converter is part of this component right here. Doesn't have to be, but can be. So this would be where the power converter is. We generally always look first where the breaker box 12-volt fuse block is. That's where techs look first for the power converter as well. This is one type, one style only. This is kind of what I call a standalone converter. It's going to be real close to the fuse block, but it'll be underneath the cabinet. It can be screwed to the wall, the floor, upside down, anywhere, but it's generally still close proximity to the 12-volt fuse block. It is just plugged into a 110 receptacle, and it's got the 12-volt wires coming to it. Now, you might not be able to see this. You might have to take the fuse block 110 breaker loose off the wall, pull it out 2 foot, find the converter, or take an inspection panel off under a fifth wheel. Might have to crawl in the basement of the fifth wheel, unscrew a wall panel, and this will be underneath the wall panel. Hopefully not under the commode. Occasionally we find them there, and if you get a water leak in the commode area, we ruin a $200 converter real quick. You do need to know where this is. Every converter, all, no exceptions, have got 2 main fuses on them. You're going to have to get to these someday if you ever short the wires out at the battery connection. For decades, converters only have 1 fuse, and every time a customer hooked the battery up backwards, he burned up his $200 converter. Today, we don't fry the converter, we just blow out a fuse, but you need to know where they are when you need to know where they're at, because you need to check them. You also need some kind of tester to check fuses. The ohm meter that I had will do it. Again, I don't expect you to go out and buy an ohm meter. Don't need to. This is a little bitty 12-volt test light. This is one of the least expensive, cheapest ones on the market. $5 is all this costs. You can pay $60 for one if you go to real expensive places. I still want to use the 12-volt light tester myself because I'm older. This is going to be under a cabinet, under the couch, inside the kitchen cabinet, so it's going to be dark. The nice thing about a 12-volt light tester is it lights up. So if I am in a dark area, can't see real good light, this is going to give me some more light, and I don't have to look at a meter. If I'm using a volt ohm meter, I've got to be able to see that meter while I can't see my hands. Makes it a little harder. So I do like even a cheap little voltmeter light tester like this. So you're going to need one of the two. You have to have a way of checking 12 volt in your RV because every light fixture in the RV is 12 volt. Even though the air conditioner consumes 110 or AC power to run, the wall thermostat uses 12 volt. So if the wall thermostat don't work, the air conditioner don't work, even though you got plenty of 110 power. The water pump works off 12 volt, the furnace works off 12 volt. The refrigerator, even though most work on gas electric and some work on gas electric and 12 volt, the switching system on all of them work on 12 volt. So if we got a bad battery, we lose 12 volt. Refrigerator's not going to work on gas electric or anything. So that's the most important thing and system in the unit. So we want to remember that. So you should know more about this system than any other thing on the RV. If I had this converter installed by my manufacturer, or even this converter installed by my manufacturer and it goes out, I'm not going to put this brand, this type back in my unit. What the manufacturer uses and what you can buy for the same amount of money, maybe even cheaper, you can get a better product. You do not have to put a converter back in your unit. You can put a converter charger back in your RV. And there's other brands that do have charging capability that doesn't boil the water out of the batteries. And you're not necessarily paying a whole lot more money, 30 bucks, and you get a good charger converter. We carry about 4 different brands, so we've always got the option. This just happens to be one other company. This one's called a Temperature. This battery, you run a wire from the converter to the battery. It actually takes the temperature of the battery, and when the battery's coming up and going to overheat and boil the water, it tells the converter that, and the converter kicks back voltage. No brainer, real easy. Another brand of converter has what they call a Charge Wizard on it, and it does same thing, except it's not checking temperature. It checks the battery voltage coming from the battery, cuts the converter voltage back down maybe to 12.8 when the battery's at 13 volts. Again, not overcharging the battery, not heating it. And the Charge Wizard's got a couple other things. If you're into engineering and you're into electrical and you like doing things and testing things, the Charge Wizard's got 3 modes of charge that you can pick. Matter of fact, if you had a boat and you boated as well as RV'd, boat battery went dead, pull it out of the boat, bring it to your Charge Wizard and put it on marine charge. And this will bring your boat battery up as fast as it could. So it can be used on a boat as well as the RV. So you do have choices. Again, I would never put that one back in mine. This model here has the converter that I slid out of here. When this goes bad, I don't have to put this one back in. So I can still take any other box model converter that I want, mount somewhere around it, because all I got to do is make 12 volt wires connect to it. So I don't have to stick with this. And I can maybe buy this for the same price that this one that's not as good is. Don't rely on the RV manufacturer putting the best or correct thing in your unit. Most of the factories don't understand what I'm telling you. We're not doing question and answers. I'll keep going. I took the cover off this just to show you. This is the entire 12 volt fuse block. This is where we would be fusing for lights, water pump, furnace, refrigerator, all the DC systems in the RV. This is a really nice one because this row right here is LED lights. So if I had this hooked up and had a fuse in here, no lights would be on, but if a fuse blows without you needing a light tester, the light comes on. So if you look at your fuse block, there's light on, you got a blown fuse. You don't even need a 12 volt light tester. This is going to tell you fuse is bad. Fortunate thing, long time ago, probably 10 years ago, we went to plastic fuses, got away from the glass fuses. That eliminated 90% of our 12 volt problems. When we had glass fuses, it was those glass fuses that were the problem 90% of the time. We really have very little shorting issues or work. This is how the 110 breakers mount in here. We're going to do a 110 class on another video, but the 110 breakers do just pull out. In that class, we're going to talk about we need to, since we go down the road and we shake and we vibrate, and if any of y'all's been on Highway 40 in Oklahoma, 10 going east towards Louisiana, if you could just imagine putting your house up on blocks, putting it on a trailer, and then jumbling down the road, something might come loose. So, customers, do you need to maintain, look for loose wires? Yes. Has anybody done it for you? Nobody. I'm a dealer, been selling 43 years, and we test our units 3 different times. But if they stay plugged in, everything works, lights don't turn off, we never throw a breaker. We do not, and no other dealer in America takes the cover off, checks every wire for a loose connection, checks every 110 breaker. Absolutely nobody's done that. We're relying on the guy at the factory that hooked it up to tighten them enough. And he might have, but in the 1,100 mile trip from Indiana to Conroe, Texas, A couple might have loosened up, not bad enough to blow fuses, but in another 2,000 miles, you might have a loose enough wire to be an issue. So as normal maintenance, you are going to want to find your fuse block and breaker box. I'm kind of going to talk about the breakers for a second, but we're going to find that fuse block. We're going to get a screwdriver. If you notice, I don't have a watch, no rings on. I've been in this industry 43 years. I've welded my wedding ring to bolts before under car hoods, so don't wear any kind of jewelry. When we're working on the 12 volt, I'd recommend you take all your jewelry off because we can weld. We're not going to electrocute ourselves, but we can weld ourselves. We're going to disconnect the ground wire on the battery. We're going to tell our wives what we're getting ready to do, because we're going to have to unplug the RV if we're camping and doing this. Wives are smart enough to go plug the RV back in. So we want to communicate properly with our partners and tell them we're working on it. We'll turn it back on in a half hour. So we're going to find the fuse block, take a screwdriver, and we're actually never just going to check for tight screws. We're going to break them loose and then retighten them. And the reason we do that is if they've been loose, they will weld themselves. So we can still have a loose wire in there even though you can't turn the screw. So we back off and break loose every screw, then we retighten them. We're actually going to look at the wires. They should be pretty bright brass colored. If they're pretty black, brown, we've either got a loose ground wire, something's gone wrong in that system. That's going to tell us to look farther. But if you don't do this, it never happens. So this is something that should be a normal maintenance. We're also going to do that on the 110 system. We're actually going to pull the cover off like I did here, expose the breakers. They don't have to be pulled out. Most of the time you can get to the screw on the wires, and again, we're going to break them loose, retighten them. And we're going to do that not only to the breakers, but these wires. The wires here, what we call the neutral line, the white wires and the grounds are going to go to it. These are more important than the breakers, especially if you have a big fifth wheel with a 50 amp electric system. If any neutral wires come loose, the two hot lines go to ground as 220 and we just lost a microwave, a converter, or whatever. So it's more important really checking the white wires and the ground lines than it is checking the hot line to the breaker. You can actually see burned breakers sometimes, but they don't have to be taken out. You can get to the screws right here from the front, so you don't have to physically take them out. If it's 8-9 years old, I'm going to take them out. I want to look at them, see if they've been burned and all that. So, alrighty, I'm going to mention inverters, but we're not going to get into them. That's another class. If you've noticed in the last 2 years at least, we're putting house-type refrigerators in trailers and fifth wheels. We've actually done it in fifth wheels for 30 years. Real high-dollar fifth wheels we put house types in. Now we're doing it in standard little travel trailers. So, since we weren't running on gas going down the road, the refrigerators need to be able to run off the battery. So we started installing 1,000 to 1,200 watt inverters. An inverter is the opposite of a battery charger. A battery charger we plug into the electricity, like I had down here, just extension cord, and it produces 12 volt battery power to charge batteries. This is plugged into the battery, and the battery voltage is producing AC voltage, just like we're running all these lights, everything. So this is the opposite of a converter, and it's called an inverter. People get these confused all the time. It's got a button on it somewhere, and it's going to tell you this one's got it right here. We get this phone call all the time. How do I know if I've got it turned on or off? Well, right here, the directions above the button. The switch out means it's ready to run on 12 volt. Switch in, when you unplug from 110, it is not going to run on 12 volt. So you do need to know where this is. You need to know how to turn it on and off. There is a reason to turn it off. Inverters are going to draw 12 volt even if that refrigerator is not on 12 volt. So this could kill your batteries quite quickly if you leave it on all the time. And we're not plugged into an electric source. So if you store your trailer, don't turn this off, and especially don't disconnect your battery. It's going to kill your battery probably a day and a half, 2 days. It's going to be deader than doornail. So if you've got a trailer or a fifth wheel, motorhomes have what we call battery disconnect switches in them, and they can push a button that kills coach batteries for them. Most of the trailers' fifth wheels don't integrate that into them. So there's all different kinds of battery switches. This is what I call the old one. We were installing these in the 70s, 80s. And this is just a big old breakover bar. We always disconnected the ground wire, never the hot line. And we pull it up, we'd kill the entire 12-volt system with it. This is another kind, what I kind of call a marine one. This could be mounted outside, has a little key, and we're just going to turn it off. If we don't use this type of item, then we'd just be unscrewing a wing nut on a battery and taking the ground wire off, never the hot line, because the hot line could short out on the frame. Ground wire is not going to short out. So when you're storing your units, you need to disconnect your battery one way or another. The disconnects, this is the most expensive one. But the marine ones we'd mount outside that you just turn a switch, you're talking under $30. So they're fairly inexpensive. You'll buy one extra cable. You don't have to cut any wires, put eyelets on. We just take the existing battery wire off, connect it to one of the posts, take a new cable and put it on. So it's a really easy installation for anybody. Don't even have to have a shop do it at that point. That's just about it. This is 12 volt, but remember, battery's the most important. Need to know where your converter is. You need a way of checking fuses, so you need a light tester or volt ohm meter on them. Thank you. See you at the next class.